This is the story of an ocean that one day becomes land, as it petrifies into a vast plateau of sand and stone. This soil is also where a river was successfully created over time. Using all its might, it gradually embedded itself deeper within the depths of the earth. Having witnessed the dawn of the world, this land is where the Colorado River and its many streams have slaved away over millions of years to shape an incredible maze of canyons. Wind, sand, and frost simply put the final touches in broadening its backdrop into a boundless landscape, where the Colorado water's rumble resonates with the canyon's subsoil. It is from the heights of the Rocky Mountains that originates the Colorado, western United States' longest river. It travels over a distance of 2,300 kilometers before vanishing into the Gulf of California. Each year, Brian Dierker coordinates 2 to 3 scientific expeditions on the Colorado River in order to study this primeval land that brings us back to the Earth's early beginning. In this impressive rock nation, the Grand Canyon is the epitome of excessiveness, up to 30 kilometers wide, 400 kilometers long, and 2,000 meters deep. Brian Dierker truly feels at home in this colossal valley. He has traveled the course of this river hundreds of times, spending numerous weeks navigating within the massive stone partition walls where the rowdy Colorado flows.
I'd say the river is probably something like maybe a lion, or what, as Jim Morrison once called it, the snake is long. Something like that. But yeah, I don't have enough grasp of all the different languages to really put the right words for it. But it is definitely life. Life has to be involved there because it has a life all its own. When you think of the Colorado just as a river, the combination of how fast the landmass has risen around the river and its ability, because of these sedimentaries predominantly, these erosion rates have kept up with the landmass coming up. So I'd call it youthful as far as how busy it is, how it's working all the time to make the Grand Canyon. I'd call it youthful.
The Colorado's canyons remain unmarked on geographical maps until 1869. It is at that time that state geologist and ethnologist John Wesley Powell organized a 9-man expedition using 4 wooden boats that would take them along the course of this never-before-traveled river. These men took great risk in venturing within the depths of the Colorado to discover the rapids of this powerful river for the very first time. The first descent through the Colorado River will forever be remembered in American history as one of the greatest adventures of the country. Geologist Matt Kaplinski travels the Grand Canyon in an effort to decipher the land's history. He knows what his colleague John Wesley Powell might have experienced over a century ago as a man exploring the river and its sheer cliffs.
When you flash back to what it was like to be Powell, it's impressive how tough they were.
Yeah.
Just like it's even more impressive to me how tough the natives were that were making a living down here.
Oh yeah.
The way that you see these, you go up some of these routes that were their everyday sidewalks, and those people were up and down it every day, and you get up there and you think you're going to die, and you have this huge epic of a hike and you're clinging onto cliffs. To those guys, it's walking down a sidewalk, and it's what they had to do to, oh, I'm going to go walk 10 miles today. I got to go see my mom. Go up here and then go up to the rim and then drop over into the next drainage, and I'm going to bring her some mesquite beans. And,
really tough.
Just super impressive.
Since the days of Powell, a large number of geologists, archaeologists, and paleontologists continue to study the land's history, which to this day hasn't been fully exposed. Here we know for a fact that the river behaves stubbornly. Simply by asserting its sheer strength, it has relentlessly sculpted thousand-year-old valleys, stopping short of the Earth's crust. Naturalists have not yet determined the complete geological saga that unfolded here.
The canyon exposes the rocks that expose the history of the continent, but it's also about the carving of the Grand Canyon and the notion that the canyon was carved by the river as, let's see, how do I do this? As the plateau rose up, the river is cutting down into it is not the way it appears to have worked, because the dating of the top of the plateau, the rim, it shows that the elevation of the plateau has been there since the Eocene, 40 million years ago, and the canyon's only 6 million years old. So the plateau was already up there when the canyon started carving.
For millions of years, the Colorado River has traversed a vast expanse of land on a global scale. It flows through a plateau bearing the same name that stretches over 400,000 square kilometers, an area slightly smaller than that of France. John Hafner has spent his life on the Colorado Plateau defining the region's topography.
Didn't look very promising this morning, but this is really nice.
This is spectacular. It's actually the cloudy days out here that really give you the
Although he
contrast.
spent years surveying this plateau, he now discovers it at bird's eye view in the company of Lou Bartel, an aerostat pilot. The ancient sea's waters have left its mark just about everywhere, as it once completely submerged this land. Before eventually receding, it abandoned striking layers of sediment.
This area is all, part of the Colorado Plateau. Of course, up here, and geology-wise, this would have all been covered by a real shallow sea, and compressed over time through salt layers and different sandstone. Pretty much the majority of this rock is Navajo sandstone with Cayenta cap rock. A little bit of Moen Kopi I've seen out here. Does that sound pretty accurate to you?
Yes, it does.
It's interesting when you're looking down on birds.
Yes.
The stratified sediments accumulated over the course of several geological eras will end up broken by powerful shifts originating from within the Earth's core. As the seabeds rise from below to reach a lofty 1,600-meter height, two impressive mountain chains emerge into what is now currently known as the Colorado Plateau.
It's probably the most unique because it's so fragile and rugged. Everything that lives here is pretty hardy. I mean, all the plant life here, all the animal life. It's you've got to be a hardy animal to survive out here, and the people as well. It's kind of the same thing, and at the same time, it's also very sensitive.
The substantial forces that have jolted this plateau over a period of 400 million years have gradually fashioned a world made entirely of rocks and stone. In turn, the river bore straight through the plateau, burrowing little by little within the depths of the earth, its path over a distance of hundreds of kilometers. The Colorado Plateau is deemed the land of far and wide spaces, the Western American soil. American cinema has made an icon of this vast desert by filming its greatest westerns right here in Monument Valley. Colorado is first and foremost Indian land. This soil is exactly where the Navajo once clashed with the Spanish and later endured repeated assaults from the white-skinned pioneers in pursuit of the new frontier. Up until the 20th century, the American Army unrelentingly led fierce battles that brought these Indian nations to their knees, confining them to the strict boundaries of Indian reservations, where their descendants live to this day.
That's what the Deanie was saying yesterday about the mudheads, that they are warrior, related to warrior. Across the top, bighorn sheep representations. And those are the earliest style of animals represented here at this site.
Archaeologist
And they
Sally
probably
Cole
are
has developed a
5,000
passion
years
for
ago,
petroglyphs,
at
the
least.
drawings etched
So
in
it's
stone
amazing.
that tell tales of a much distant past.
Visible because sandstone is
On the facade of the sheer cliffs, Anasazi, the Navajos' ancestors, have left behind copious amounts of symbols and mysterious drawings, evidence of a truly ancient society.
So it's an important subject that's represented here very well during basket maker times, and we have a hint that it might have been represented earlier by these hunter-gatherer people who were living here. Oh, at least, like I said, these are probably at least 5,000 years old now. So the style began sometime around 3000 BC. Can you go to the left-hand side of the panel? Perfect. So then if you go all the way to the left where the panel pretty well stops, and just kind of hold it up against that. This is the earliest manifestation of what was being made and represented during around 400 BC to about 500 AD. And this place is really important because this is a crossing of the San Juan River. And the whole idea is your people are moving from north to south of the San Juan and back again. As you came across this river 2,000 plus years ago, this is what would have greeted you. So you knew who was here, you knew what was important to them. And their identities, you know, their identity markers. It's not covering up anything, or you could put it
In order to survive these deserts of sand and stone, men established themselves along the river. The region is an enormous maze filled with ravines, narrows, and canyons. There are thousands of them, and in the cliffs, entire villages have been erected. The Anasazi, architects of the cliffs, built elaborate structures stone by stone in each of the many natural sites that provided them with safety. They expanded their civilization by sprawling over the entire Colorado Plateau and using the rivers as their means of communication.
The Colorado Plateau has so many canyons, and as far as we know, these canyons, and certainly the river corridors, were occupied forever. This river is very, all the rivers, the Colorado River, you would have to come out. There would have been places you could not have walked through the Colorado River. But all those canyons connect up. So trading peoples with new ideas are going to follow these river corridors because it's the only really permanent water. We have a lot of side streams, but if you're a lot of the permanent water, the waterways. These people control these waterways. If you want to think it, they were leaving their mark and their information along the major waterways all over the Colorado Plateau.
In the eyes of the Navajo, this land is the work of divine beings, whose infinite powers of creation they continue to bow down to. Under Brian's watchful eye, the expedition carries on its journey on the river at the foot of the Grand Canyon. Brian is the grand knowledge bearer of the river, thus the man they call upon during filmmaking in the area.
What's kind of interesting is this is the beach that was featured in Into the Wild. This is the Dutch girl without her shirt on.
Not only has Brian Dierker acted as the main technical consultant for Sean Penn's movie Into the Wild, but he was also one of its lead actors.
They did a couple other scenes that they didn't use, but... Yeah, and we're just gonna pan around here. Yep, that was the rock bar right there. Doesn't look like much. It was pretty ridiculous looking when we were there. Oh, that's for sure.
Since the 70s, he has furthered his river knowledge. He knows the 160 rapids along its course inside and out. He knows its tricks and its many hazards.
I started with, it was a 24-day one-boat row trip, with freeze-dried food. There were 8 people on the trip. And we were on these galley oars, big 13-foot oars, like these side tubes with a frame in between them, and big 4 13-foot oars, and then a guy standing on the back with a sweep oar to steer. And it just infused responsibility to you. You needed to have the food thing down, you needed to have the navigation down, and you needed to have some people skills to interact and make the trip right. It teaches you so much, and it's good for young people to do this stuff. It teaches them not just boating skills, it teaches them a lot of different skills. So I think all of those things, you know, it's a basket full of stuff, you know.
Plus the freedom of it.
Well, that's the thing.
You're on your world is defined by your trip, and you're in charge of it.
You can be really loud down here and free. Woo! Nobody heard it.
Taking a trip down the Colorado is like stepping through the doorway of time. It takes you back 2 billion years to the Precambrian era, the planet's very first geological period. Over time, the river has crafted what is known as the oldest rock unit to ever grace this Earth, the Vishnu Schist, which is essentially a metamorphic rock derived from extremely old deposits of ash, mud, and sand. All geologists dream of touching this stone. It's as if they're able to feel the Earth in the first hours of its creation.
This is a part of the Precambrian Vishnu metamorphic complex, and this particular rock is a pretty rare one. It's a pegmatite with a mafic mineral assemblage in it. All the minerals in here are, you don't usually see them in a pegmatite here, which is a pegmatite is an igneous, it's a dike that shoots through the host rock off of a magma chamber very quickly into the surrounding rocks, and the drop in pressure as it squirts into the rocks in the surrounding area causes these crystals to nucleate and grow very large, which is pretty cool. Look at that beauty, huh?
To travel down the river while engrossed in a realm of the distant past is a lifelong dream for many. Navigating the Colorado is Trey's livelihood. He spends 5 months out of the year transporting tourists on this river.
There's not too many places in the world you can be at one time and see all 3 types of rock right in front of you, and be able to come up and touch the Earth's history, I think is absolutely amazing. And to see this river that carved through it, and to see it still carving through it is, and to be able to be a part of that and work here, and work in one of the 7 wonders of the world, I just love it. And to see people come down here and experience that, and to see people just, it sometimes almost change their life, and to watch them for the first time, because I felt the same way when I came down here. It was just blown away, and felt that one trip down here wouldn't be enough.
Lily's 20 acres and 1 Jenny mule.
Close to 20,000 people travel down the Colorado River every year. Their trip is well warranted. They had to wait 2 years at the very least, and as many as 10 in the case of private excursions.
We cannot have all things to please us, no matter how we try, till we've all gone to Jesus. We can only wonder why. I had a daughter, she's the apple of my eye. Try to give her something like I never had. Don't wanna ever hear her cry. We cannot have all things to please us, no matter how we try. Till we've all gone to Jesus, we can only wonder why.
As the river rushes through the canyon, other valleys appear. A little further north, accessible by climbing a steep ascending trail, is where Canyonlands is located, another national park. That is the panorama Patrick photographs in his endless pursuit of a new perspective and light. He wanders through this territory not unlike the first pioneer photographers who operated view cameras.
The vastness of the landscape, the ability to feel. I realize it's a bit of a cliche to find oneself alone in the middle of scenery such as this, but I admit, I do enjoy this solitude. There are landscapes that allow you to break away. Because they are so far removed, you separate yourself from the rest of the world. Although I live in the present, it's as if time had stopped. Sometimes I kind of picture myself in the past, trying to see through the eyes of these explorers discovering the river.
The patience required to attain the right exposure in operating view cameras was just as vital to the first photographers responsible for surveying the Western American territories through their images. Toward the end of the American Civil War, in 1866, the American government launched 4 large-scale geographical expeditions in order to map out the plateau's relief and multiple outlines on the still blank canvases of topographical charts.
Some of these landscapes are pretty harsh. I've been scared before.
When
the storms are particularly intense, we know that we're totally exposed, so there's a bit of a risk factor involved, an adventure feel. The days when the panorama is obscured by overcast skies or storms are not totally wasted on me. It's quite the opposite, even though there are times you can't take any pictures due to the extreme weather. These periods are almost always followed by a lull where the skies break up in shafts of light that illuminate the face of the cliffs. And that is what gives the background a new depth and intensity, which I strive to portray through my work.
Dans la boîte.
The dream of a journey can also be hiking down a trail through the Grand Canyon, enjoying the viewpoints that come into sight while twisting and turning along the cliff's overhang. As Grand Canyon National Park guides, it is Clark and Mark's job to hike down the South Kaibab Trail. A 6-hour hike down this trail leads you to the river without ever navigating its waters. Native Indians living at the bottom of the Grand Canyon marched on this exact footpath over 800 years ago.
The South Kaibab Trail was built in 1928 specifically to allow people access to get from the rim, the south rim of the Grand Canyon, all the way down to the Colorado River, which if you look at across the Grand Canyon, you realize is almost completely inaccessible. You have vertical cliff walls and seemingly impossible terrain. And if you look at a map of the Grand Canyon over this vast area, there's only a few places where it's possible to get down. Most of those follow these tiny little canyons. Some of them drop vertically, so of course there's no way to get down without abseiling. But this ridgeline trail is one of the few that was built specifically to be able to get you from the very, very top all the way down to the very bottom.
Although the Colorado River may still appear in its wild state to the untrained eye, it has nonetheless lost part of its grandeur by becoming a necessary lifeline for most of Western America.
The Colorado River is the source of life for the West, for the entire Western United States. If it weren't for the Colorado River, states like California, Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Colorado, none of them would exist because there simply isn't enough water in the West to sustain any kind of a population whatsoever. But the Colorado, the fastest moving, the biggest, the most impressive, the most incredible river in the West, really is the source of life and has been for tens of thousands of years.
In spite of the fact that this river has so far succeeded in preserving its dignity, the Colorado is in the early stages of depletion. This river currently flows through the Earth's arteries, bringing life to 24 million people, 35 American cities, and 7 of the American states. Little by little, the Colorado River fades away as a result of pumping operations supplying water to the many channels, waterworks, diversion canals, and the 10 or so dams, all put into place in a compelling attempt to restrain it. The Colorado is slowly dying for the sake of Las Vegas's monumental fountains and casinos, the azure pools, the countless watered golf courses in the desert, and the Imperial Valley, where it has undeniably been brought to shame. In Mexico, as men longingly stare at nothing more than sand, this river has already ceased to exist. This is a river that makes a garden out of the desert it traverses. The Nile gave birth to a country, and in the process, to one of the most extraordinary civilizations of all times. A source of life in a region that knows no rain, the Nile is sacred to its inhabitants. 90% of Egyptians live along its shorelines. In spite of its beneficial floods, the river's demeanor remained unforeseeable. For thousands of years, every effort has been put forth to render it even-tempered and stable. Prayers, sacrifices, channels, and dams. Our story begins with the Sudanese border precinct in ancient Nubia. An entire population sharing an unparalleled, intimate bond with the river once lived here.
There was a ceremony which taking place. Everybody in Nubian villages, when they born, the father was taking the child to the shore of the Nile and take some water. After she washes her face, she washes also my face. I mean, my mother did this. From that day on, he started to relate to this Nile and his life.
Hussein was born half a century ago. The river he knew as a child no longer exists, and the country where he was born has likewise disappeared. In its place now resides the 500-kilometer-long Lake Nasser, an offspring of the sizable Aswan Dam built in the 60s. For 7 years now, Hussein has not navigated the lake's waters, nor has he caught a glimpse of the sunken Abu Simbel Temple. 60 meters below the surface rests the vestiges of his native village and his ancestors' tombs.
We are exactly above the houses of my old village, Abu Simbel. On the other side, in front of us, is Abu Simbel Temple. Here, down here, was houses. Andoro jayimi na bayam bahar min jabanyimi wadillo no norotanga banyikan tarmi bahar.
Although the dam has successfully regulated the Nile's floods, hereby doubling the yield of the country's harvest, 43 villages were engulfed and 100,000 Nubians were relocated hundreds of kilometers away in villages in the heart of the desert.
How come you can take your motherland.
In the 80s, a few of them returned to the lake's shores in an attempt to build a new Abu Simbel. Everything needed to be built from scratch: the homes, the school, and the hospital. Hussein and his family have taken part in this crusade, fueled by the desire to preserve their Nubian cultural heritage. Hussein wanted his children to live here, close to his former childhood playground.
Supposing that this is the west bank of the Nile, here, and the temple was here, looking to the east. We were there every day, every morning, looking to this direction, seeing that temple in front of us, drawing it and carving it every minute. And this temple is a part of my life.
This is the lone item Hussein was able to bring from his native village, a sculpture he had begun at the age of 7.
Maybe the tourists, when they come to see the temples, they cannot imagine this. No. It's a place deeply related with the people and their life. And this is what Abu Simbel is, for me and for everybody here.
Abu Simbel Temple was fortunately rescued. In response to an international outcry, UNESCO has provided the necessary funds in order to reposition it higher by 60 meters. Built over 3,200 years ago by Ramses II and carved from stone, the temple is of colossal proportions. A unique work of art, it has forever fascinated travelers and explorers alike, as was the case for Champollion, who braved the dangers of a lengthy journey to study it. Never in his childhood had Hussein read Champollion.
My grandmother used to tell us stories about these statues, these monuments, but it was not, of course, not that real thing like we know now from the books. It was just something else, of course. They didn't know that Ramses. They're always mentioning as our grandfather. What does it name? Nobody knows.
Ramses' reign lasted 66 years. Grand builder, great warrior, as God's equal, his engraved name appears just about everywhere around here. In decrypting Ramses' signature found on Abu Simbel's grounds, Champollion knew he had uncovered the key to the hieroglyphics.
I can draw this temple from my mind. Not only me, everyone from my village can draw it from his mind. It's a part of us. It's a part of us. Like you're writing your name.
Ahmed Abdul Hassan has christened his boat the Captain. He must be addressed as the Ray, the chief. We asked him to moor on Elephant Tiny Island at the center of the Nile in Aswan. The Ray has cruised these waters for 50 years. The river is his domain.
The Nile. If the Nile isn't constantly within my sight, I collapse like a fish out of water. To be honest, nothing matters much outside of the Nile. To us, it's life. We refer to it as the sea. It's our vernacular. You call it the Nile because you went to school. You have seen the sea. For me, the Nile is the only sea I've ever known.
Located downstream of the Nile's first cataract, Aswan anciently epitomized the road between Black Africa and Egypt. Acting as the kingdom's southern border, this is where each summer flood was eagerly anticipated. Today, Aswan is at the dam's foot, the river restrained, and happy the king of the Nile is in a deep sleep. This is Elephantine Island's Nilometer, a structure designed to measure the river's flood or water level, hence forecasting feast or famine. Evidence of previous floods is still visible, thereby allowing us to visualize the water that climbed up the stairs over thousands of years. On each wall, each stone, the vestiges from the past can be scooped up by the shovelful. More than 200 kilometers further north, we head towards Luxor. For the traveler, the choice of which vessel to board remains a serious undertaking. We were most fortunate in embarking on the Aswan, the Nile's most majestic sailboat, under Mamdou's skilled maneuver. He has known the river since the age of 8.
My father would mentor me, as sailing was his expertise. If I ever failed to remember his advice, or to produce a decent knot, for example, he would rope me to the top of the mast for an hour or two. That I would never forget.
The Aswan is the result of a slightly wild idea to reintroduce grand sailboats back on the river. It would be in the style of a dahabe, one of the Nile's traditional sailboats that had long since disappeared. Today, the Aswan's distinctive sails are recognized by every captain it crosses paths with. In Mamdou's eyes, the Aswan is the most striking of all sailboats. It's the typical score-settling tale, that of a son who fulfills his own father's dream.
In the beginning, owning a dahabieh was my father's business, but it has become my story. Without my father's passionate desire, I would never have pursued this endeavor. I'm proud of my father. He has envisioned this dream, and I managed to carry it out.
We're happy. We can safely say we are proud of having brought back majestic sails on the Nile. If we take a good look, if we're sailing on the Nile, that is what the Nile is all about. That's the true Nile, just like it was at the time of, or even before pharaohs, but at a much later moment in time.
The Aswan has been designed to welcome tourists, those yearning for a trip back in time. Mamdou has partnered with a French woman and a Mexican, Enrique, who has spent his life laboring before finally appeasing his strongest travel desires along the course of the Nile. The leisurely pace of sailing allows for the luxury of discovering Egypt as if time was stopped. Where the fisherman's actions mirror those of his ancestors, where the peasant, the fellah, is a genuine gardener accustomed to abide by the constraints of the river, as he has done for thousands of years. Due to the risk of schistosomiasis, a disease caused by a parasite far more ferocious than the now long gone crocodiles, it's not recommended for visitors passing through. But what a treat it is to dive through the refreshing waters that have traveled over 6,000 kilometers from the foot of the equatorial African volcanoes where they take their source.
My father would tell me the Nile was Egypt's artery, how it supplies water for crop growing, water for drinking, how the Nile's water is everything to us. He told me to be considerate towards it, that it was a responsibility, how you must take good care of the Nile so it, in turn, can look after you.
A precarious balance exists between two worlds apart. Fishermen cast their nets as the caravan passes by. 400 large vessels skim the river's water between Aswan and Luxor. Mamdouh remains tight-lipped about it. The topic is taboo. Egypt is in dire need of the 10 million tourists they ferry annually. As for the Nile, the constant churning of propellers does not allow for the fish to grow. The Nile shores were once draped in silt from the floods. This is where Egypt goes back to its roots, reclaiming its rights at its own pace. Cotton, grain, vegetables, sugarcane. Agriculture is an essential resource for Egypt. It employs 1/3 of the active population. The narrowest area located between Aswan and Luxor is Gebel Silsileh. Pharaohs extracted from its walls the incomparable sandstone needed for the countless temples erected all over Egypt in a display of glory and as a tribute to their patron gods. The sandstone bears the same pervading common scars, the vestiges of centuries of relentless hammering for its removal. Long ago, thousands of boats loaded with massive blocks have moored in wait of the flood that would help haul their hefty cargo to Karnak, Abydos, or Luxor. The temples of Luxor, formerly ancient Thebes, and those of Karnak, located a few kilometers apart, are among the best preserved and the most remarkable structures from ancient Egypt. The desert's proximity, however, brings about salt uplifts that are damaging to the stone.
My grandfather already worked here, and so did my father. To me, it feels as though I'm working on the glorified land of my ancestors. As Egyptians, we are pharaohs and extremely proud of it. I'm also very much in awe to be touching a 7,000-year-old monument. We are all amazed around here.
7,000 years. It is rather closer to 4,000 years, as Amenhotep III and Ramses are not that old. These temples were dedicated to Amun-Re, the Egyptian god renowned for traversing the river in his golden boat each year. This is the river at daybreak, when the coming and going of boats on the Nile begins. There is a continual traffic flow between the east and west banks. To the east are the city and its temples, whereas the Valley of the Kings and its tombs are located west. As early as 6 a.m., laborers are hard at work on the several excavation sites. A few hundred meters from the Nile shoreline stand the famed Colossi of Memnon. This is where, in ancient times, pilgrims would come to hear their oracle after traversing the deserts. Hurig Surosian is an archaeologist engrossed by the massive, mystifying, faceless statues. As a passionate woman who readily compares her work to that of a detective, there are always mysteries waiting to be solved.
You know, it's always been our biggest hope, our dream, to discover some of the missing pieces from the two colossi. However, we cannot excavate large holes to avoid jeopardizing the stability of the statues. Instead, we carry out smaller-scale soundings. We make a few every year. This year, we happened to find a stone which, once overturned, revealed 2 toes and some large toes, the ones you see here. That is a historical moment. Yes, it's a meter. It's a meter wide, about 99. I'll give you the width of a single toe section. It's 25. Can you believe it? 25 centimeters. And 21.2 for the other.
The Colossus's toe is simply one of the many findings unearthed by Hurig Surosian. An enormous excavation site lays beyond the gigantic statues. This is Hurig's kingdom, her 3-hectare-wide research site. From January to March, the site is bustling much like an ant colony, with 250 laborers at work. The largest temple of the West Bank, built by one of the most influential pharaohs of all time, Amenhotep III, once stood here. The monument of colossal proportions was first partially destroyed by an earthquake and later pillaged by stone raiders. In 1998, when Hurig Surosian surveys the site, it is little more than a field of ruins.
We want to restore the essence of the temple that was at one time prestigious. It was the largest temple, one of the better appointed, the most exquisite, if I may say, as this was the period during which art was also at its prime. And as we know, skill and art go hand in hand.
Through private funding, Hurig establishes an international team and tackles an almost impossible task: to gather the temple's scattered pieces and restore part of their original structure to salvage them from destruction and complete loss.
You would think they are simply a bunch of stone pebbles randomly tossed, but in reality, each stone bears a wealth of historical data.
It is meticulous work, like putting together the pieces of a massive, complex puzzle. Hurig Surosian is Armenian. Born in Baghdad, she initially began her studies in Beirut, then in Canada, and finally at the Sorbonne in Paris, where she first discovered Egyptology. For the last 30 years, as if reconstructing her own distant family history, she perseveres in piecing back together the vestiges of a long-lost civilization.
We have small workshops just about everywhere. Our reconstruction experts work in the granite workshops. Personally, I'm quite skilled at piecing statues back together, and I can also reconstruct, but these people sometimes beat me at it. Look at the hundreds of pieces. All of these are fragments from a colossus.
It is a work of patience that sometimes brings about wonderful surprises. 2 years ago, workers unearthed a uniform mass. The pharaoh's knee suddenly reveals itself. Hurig then initiates small excavations close by. She is on the hunt for the pharaoh's wife.
And then you're in the mud, in the dark, and I believe it to be the most unforgettable moment. You catch a glimpse of the beautiful features, almond-shaped eyes, a small nose with rosebud lips. She is there with a distant gaze and a faint smile. To us, she is alive. To me, this is how I forever remember her, just as she first majestically appeared in all her splendor.
Another block discovered slightly further is one of the most stunning discoveries on site, the spouse of Amenhotep III, forever immortalized by the skilled hand of a sculptor over 3,400 years back. Today, part of the pharaoh's abdomen shall at last regain its rightful place on the original statue. The base, the legs, and the hips have already been assembled, but the remainder of the operation is delicate. This puzzle piece weighs 5 tons.
It's an extraordinary moment spent reflecting on the monument we have just reassembled. Initially, we rejoice along with the workers. We then applaud and chant, but soon after we also become filled with emotion.
The Nile is not only a museum. As Mamdouh previously said, the Nile is Egypt's artery, and for the children of Egypt, the Nile is sacred because their future lies within. Nariman and Wafa were born in Garagos, a rural village like many others in the Nile Valley. Nariman's family is Copt. They are Christian. Copts deem themselves as direct descendants of Pharaonic-era Egyptians, as they fought Islamization during the 7th century. They are farmers or artisans. Nariman's father and uncle are both potters. Copt dwellings are easily recognized by the display of a sculpted cross above their door. Garagos counts approximately 5,000 of them, in addition to 2 churches. Although Garagos is considered a village, its 25,000 inhabitants make it a very large one. It mirrors Egypt's demographic boom, from 35 million people in 1970 to 80 million to date, half of the country's population being below the age of 25. At present, Egypt's biggest challenge remains that of feeding its people, finding them employment, and educating the population. School is mandatory, thus decreasing the level of illiteracy, which today stands at 30%. However, a few parents still hold back sending their children to school because of the labor demand in agricultural work. While Nariman's school is Coptic, 1/3 of its students are Muslim, since it provides a non-religious education. This is the pottery workshop that employs Nariman and Wafa's parents. Their creations, made of red-colored earth from Aswan, is sold all the way to Cairo or Alexandria. In times of heightened interreligious tension, the question of relationships with Muslims remains sensitive and warrants no more than a cautious answer.
Here in Garagos, the situation is unique. Since it's a village, everyone knows each other. Copts and Muslims have always lived harmoniously together.
In pressing, it's easy to sense that things have somehow changed.
Before, you see, everybody used to eat from the same dish. Whereas now, everyone eats in individual plates. That's the way it is. Society changes. Things are not the way they used to be. You know that.
Guitar. 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 Piano. 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 Drums. 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 Lute. 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 Weekend. 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 Weekend.
Society changes while children learn foreign languages. But what good are diplomas in a city secluded from the tourist circuit and that has little to offer in terms of skilled employment? Isn't studying a form of escape in itself?
You know, since children go to school, they are educated, they strive for a better life and a better future, it's difficult to entice them into our line of work.
My son, the last one that still lived with me, chose to leave. He needed to earn a better living than this. He had to look elsewhere.
Anyway, you can't force someone into doing pottery. It has to be a passion.
Even agriculture is gradually shunned. The revenues it generates are meager, and the exploitable terrain keeps on receding. Although it is normally a land where construction cannot take place, the already narrow strip of fertile soil is reduced. What future lays ahead for the children of the Nile, other than perhaps answering the call of the river? In following its course headed north towards the big city, within arm's reach of the hope for a world where nothing is impossible. Cairo is our journey's final stop. This is where ancient history vanishes in a haze of pollution and the Nile turns into an object of desire. Cairo is home to 16 million people. This is a typical downtown building. Mohamed Abla is one of Egypt's most prominent painters. He has been dubbed the Nile's artist by the press. Although an eloquent painter for over 30 years, his passionate and wandering life has always enticed him back to the shores of the Nile.
When I paint the Nile, now this is something like ceremony. I have to walk a lot by the Nile, I have to look to the water, I sit hours before I paint. When I paint, then I have all this. When I go and work, it is all here. I can blind work. I mean,
A painter and his archetype intimately bonded, a solemn pact between a river and a man. While visiting the United States in 1998, Mohammed Abla's workshop is completely destroyed by fire. Over 400 paintings, 20 years' worth of work, are reduced to ashes within a few hours. Disheartened, the artist sets out to find a shelter, like a wounded animal struggling to gather its strength. It is within the heart of the Nile that he shall take refuge, ready for a fresh start.
it was something like you don't exist. It's a null point. And the Nile saved me, saved my life, really. I was looking for something which is quiet and inspiring. And I saw the island. It looked so beautiful, this green small island and water, surrounded by water. I decided to have my studio here. When I came here, I looked to the Nile moving. I said, what's my life according to centuries of people's life? I have to start again. I have to start from the beginning.
Rebirth, like a faint echo reminiscent of the birth ritual Nubians once practiced on the Nile shores. Khorsaya, an island in the center of Cairo, is the sole oasis of calm and greenery. The serenity of what Mohammed Abla believed to be his paradise was short-lived. The gem in the heart of the Nile, strictly inhabited by peasants, soon grew into an object of greed. Consequently, at the beginning of the year 2000, a Saudi Arabian group of investors intent on erecting a vast building complex purchases the island from the government.
We got a letter from the government telling that up next month, the people who live in the island, they are not more allowed to cultivate, to work on the island, and to live. They have to look for other places to live. It was a shock for everybody, and people were running and crying. It was a big fight against the police, and it was big noise and newspaper, and so.
Fall of 2007, the army disembarks on island soil. In an event unprecedented in all of Egypt, the people fight back, protest, and demonstrate. Mohammed Abla becomes one of the leaders of the resistance, who brings the issue before the courts. It's much to everyone's surprise that in February 2010, the judges see eye to eye with the residents. The island regains its peacefulness, despite the fact that soldiers remain. Perhaps they are the only ones who have not yet read the judge's cease and desist order.
As long as you live, you have to believe that you have always to work, to fight, because to be quiet, to do nothing, it doesn't, no. We are in Egypt, nobody's quiet.
As the struggle tightens, each celebration is an occasion to meet each other again. Today, like all Egyptians, Mohammed's neighbors celebrate Sham el-Nassim. Every Monday of Easter, in the aftermath of confession, families flock to gardens and parks to celebrate spring's arrival. Sham el-Nassim has been celebrated in Egypt since the year 2700 BC. In the Pharaoh days, the holiday was known as Shimu, which means resurrection. As it was then a symbol of revival, the egg was standard fare, just as today's Easter egg is. In the same fashion, the famous fashik, a sun-dried salted fish renowned for bringing fertility and prosperity, also has its place. The highly popular Egyptian festival carries on until the late evening hours. Tens of thousands of people converge towards the Nile's shores, as if drawn by the river, achieving a state of adoration for the Nile that lays before their eyes. This is the one night when everything is forgotten. As they gather to casually brave the dangers of a distant past, social differences vanish, swallowed by the cover of the night, absorbed by the glow of the lanterns floating on the river. The Nile continues to flow towards the sea as a new threat materializes. The Mediterranean Sea's increased water levels caused by global warming gradually wear its delta away. That is how the rest of the world intrudes on the final stretch of its course. Thus, the river that was once saluted as a god at the time of looming floods unassumingly vanishes little by little. Christopher Columbus discovered America because he believed in heaven. On August 3, 1498, during his third voyage on the seas, the explorer discovered the shores of Venezuela, as well as the gulf of a vast river, Orinoco, the first river of the New World. Astonished by the beauty of this land and the water's might, Columbus believed he had come across one of the 4 rivers belonging to the terrestrial paradise. An Indian tribe, the Waru, greeted and welcomed the explorers. Columbus quickly noticed the pearl and gold jewelry they adorned. The gold fever, the quest for El Dorado, a kingdom governed by a tribal chief covering himself in gold dust on a daily basis, led the conquistadors to continuously push further up the river, slaughtering thousands of Indians on the way. This legendary river, the Orinoco, keeps on bearing the flow of tumultuous waters along with many myths. The last remaining descendants of the Waru Indians, who initially welcomed the Spaniards, still inhabit this delta, the largest in the world. It is a true jungle maze of mangroves and the crossing point of over 300 water channels. A large number of the Waru people, a semi-nomadic tribe, established themselves in proximity of the river over 6,000 years ago, but only a mere 20,000 remain. Julian and his family reside on one of the delta streams, located 3 hours away from the closest main road by Pirok. In their native language, Waru means the Pirok people. Whether fishermen or farmers, each Waru family, like Julian's, owns one or several pirogues, as the water is their sole means of transportation. Amerigo Vespucci, who reached this country after Columbus, named it Venezuela, Little Venice, since the Orinoco's delta was reminiscent of his native city and lagoon. The Waru refer to the Orinoco River as the father of our land, as it is a symbol of life to them. According to their culture and mythology, each animal, each plant, and each man belongs to the cosmos. The river and the forest are filled with spirits, both good and bad, as all that lives bears a soul.
It is said of this place that the Mother of Waters draws in the river's water, luring all pirogues to her. When pirogues come nearby to the small lagoon over there, the Mother of Waters draws them in, and that's what brings people to their death. Many people have died like this around here. It's a very big animal. It looks like a caiman. It's large, very large, the size of a house, like my son's house. Of course I believe in it. I've seen it before. Here, in the channels, there's quite a bit of fish. We catch sea snails, catfish, and sheatfish. Have you heard of sheatfish? It's a large fish. We also have lisa. There's a little of everything in the Orinoco, at least enough to live.
Todo. Hay mucho pescado Orinoco, bastante. El pescado. Morocoto, piraña.
There are some morocoto and piranhas as well. We also have some kobutu. There are lots around here.
Mucho por aquí.
The Orinoco is also a source of drinking water, although it's a bit brackish at the moment. The water isn't as good anymore. We tend to go get water in the forest.
In the past, The Waru move the location of their camps according to the availability of resources or when their rancherias, their dwellings on stilts, fell apart. Nowadays, an increasing number of families tend to shy away from the nomadic way of life, opting rather for a more sedentary lifestyle on the streams. About an hour trip by pirogue from Julian's, several families have come together to form a small fishermen's community. President Chavez has recently bestowed a cluster of reservoirs bearing his name, allowing them to collect rainwater to be used as a drinking water supply. In the Orinoco Delta, fishermen must keep track of not only the seasons, but equally of the tides and the current. Dry season is deemed the best as the sea extends deeper within the river, thereby bringing a large quantity of fish.
Cachicamo se llama, nombre.
This is a cachicamo tree. We call it the pirogue-making tree, as it's the one we use to construct them.
Bueno, para hacerlo la curidad. Esto se le tumba. Bueno, de ahí una semana se cova por dentro.
First, we cut it down, then hollow out the center the following week. After, we burn it, set it on fire, and that's when it splits in half, just like that.
Y después se abre así. Se agarra una 4 o 5 años.
A pirogue made from a tree like this one will last about 4 or 5 years.
Este bejuco mamure.
This is manure palm fiber. We use it to entice the mother of waters spirit away.
Este cuando lo agarra la curiara, lo agarra, entonces lo pica esto del mamure, lo pone abajo de la curiara.
We cut it and border the entire outside of the pirogue with it. It protects us. We use it as a safeguard.
Este es remedio a eso. Bueno, mis hijos se quedan.
My children will always live here. This is the only place they want to live.
Bueno, los viejos sí.
They don't wish to go anywhere else.
No sé.
Julian chose a secluded life on the edge of the world for his family. In keeping with what the Waru community represents, he entertains a paradox in trying to maintain and pass down traditions of a lifestyle from thousands of years back, while enjoying the use of a motorized pirogue. In his rancheria, parents, young couples, and children all cohabit under the same roof, hammock alongside hammock.
You must always remove the head.
How many children do you have?
I have 8 children, 4 boys and 4 girls. I also have 18 grandchildren. That makes for a crowd of people.
Mucho.
If the land irrigated by the river has preserved its mythic qualities and fascinated adventurers, scientists, anthropologists, and prospectors endlessly, it is because it meanders through the thick of the forest in the heart of a lost paradise that has fed the imagination and prose of both Jules Verne and Sir Conan Doyle. South America's second largest river, the Orinoco, traverses Venezuela from east to west, stretching over 2,200 kilometers. The river narrows as it reaches one of Latin America's most ancient cities, Bolivar City. The boat of Orinoco's Cayman, Captain Ali, is familiar to everybody in the area.
It is said that when someone is drowning here, Orinoco's freshwater dolphins come to that person's rescue. Woro people don't like Orinoco's dolphins because they eat the fish caught in their nets. But the Piaroa Indians from the upper Orinoco take care of them because they believe one can reincarnate as a dolphin. There are many legends.
The myth's potency, and more specifically the idea of a primitive lifestyle, is what guided him all the way to Bolivar City. Although he wishes he had been born Indian, Marseille was the place of his birth. Determined to realize his dream, Henry Corradini bought a one-way ticket on a ship bound for Venezuela back in 1947 and set foot on the docks of Bolivar City. The city, formerly known as Angostura by the Spaniards, literally meant where the river narrows.
Angostura, Ciudad Bolívar, c'est la ville.
Angostura, or Ciudad Bolivar, is where Simón Bolívar delivered his famous Angostura speech, which is at the very origin of American independence.
A Ciudad Bolívar, a la Angostura.
It's a city of extreme historical significance to Latin America as a whole. The Orinoco has always been regarded as the archway to the legendary mythological city of El Dorado. Spaniard and British alike were captivated by the Orinoco because they firmly believed it would lead them straight to the famous golden roof city of El Dorado.
La fameuse cité au toit d'or, au vert d'or de El Dorado.
The Orinoco was the main waterway that made, let's say, the traffic of Indian slaves from the Amazon possible. Mostly from the Caribbean, they came from French Guiana, British and Dutch Guiana, and also the Antilles, to barter with natives coming from the Amazon via the Rio Cabra. That's the reason why the Spaniards established themselves in Angostura, to be in a position to control traffic of slaves that went by not too far from here. This is where they went through.
Painter, photographer, and documentary filmmaker Henry Corradini has devoted most of his 85 years of life to filming and photographing Orinoco's native communities, such as Panare and Samina tribes, including their myths and languages. He chose Bolivar City as his home base from which he ran his forest expeditions.
Chez les indigènes, j'ai recherché une façon de vivre.
What I longed for in the native existence was a way of life that no longer existed where it came from. It still evokes a sort of nostalgia.
La tribu, on parle d'une tribu comme
The tribe. We often speak of a tribe as a disorganized group of humans, but in reality it's quite the opposite. A tribe is a genuine commune. It's the type of society, ideal small societies where people live in complete harmony, for a lifetime in the rather restrained space that is the longhouse, which shelters 70 people, where everyone sees everybody, where one is always in the sight of others.
où tout le monde se voit, on est toujours à la vue des autres. Et ces gens-là peuvent vivre pendant une vie entière, pratiquement coupés du monde.
These people can spend their lifetime far removed from the outside world without killing one another, something we would not be able to do. Natives are respectful of their culture. They are considerate towards their environment. They are courteous. Respect is inherent to their culture, the respect for one another. Not only for other human beings, but equally for animals, for nature in general. Some of the natives I have come to know, the Rakui people for example, play the flute to ask for permission before crossing a river. They ask permission from, let's say, the spirits of the river, if you will, to be allowed to cross it.
Si l'on peut dire de la rivière, de pouvoir traverser la rivière.
And when a tree is cut down, an apology is issued to the felled tree. It is cut down strictly when truly needed to make a pirogue, for example, or to establish a cultivation area. But there's an apology made. There's a feeling of transgression against an element of nature, and that it's something that should not be done, even though it has to be. What is so appalling in all this is the fact that the Christian missionaries and clerics do all they can to change this predisposition. The culmination of thousands of years of accumulated knowledge, and the missionaries are determined to strip the natives of their self-sufficiency, making them dependent on our society, forcing them to change their way of life, thus creating needs they truly could do without.
You will hear of wars and battles. Refrain from being alarmed, as these events are necessary. But this will, however, not be the end. A nation will rise against a nation, a kingdom against a kingdom, and famines and earthquakes will occur in a number of places.
The conquest has not ceased and will never end.
Depuis Christophe Colomb, l'Orinoco, c'est l'artère de pénétration par excellence.
The search for El Dorado continues.
Et au fond, on n'a jamais cessé de...
Even today, treasure hunters and governments alike seek the famous city of gold.
Les chercheurs d'or, les gouvernements recherchent le fameux El Dorado. On le recherche sous d'autres formes.
But it is sought after under different veils. The discovery of oil, for one, can be considered similar to the discovery of El Dorado.
Venezuela is currently the world's fourth largest oil producer. Massive oil fields have just recently been discovered along its river and its delta. Although the yearning for black gold has taken over that of yellow gold, the infatuation towards such riches remain very much alive. It keeps spreading to an increasingly large number of both men and women who flock to the river's shorelines in their quest for fortune or simply a better life. And so the conquest carries on. In 1530, Conquistador Diego de Ordaz left the shores of Bolivar City in the company of 1,000 men to travel over a 300-kilometer stretch up the river. Upon reaching the Llanos Plains several months after his initial departure and the carnage of hundreds of Indians along the way, the expedition was reduced to a mere 200 men. The vast Llanos territory of plains and marshes is a gigantic river basin that drains the waters of the Orinoco and its tributaries. During the rain season, nature as a whole bursts into a Garden of Eden. Llanos Plains are a paradise not only for crocodiles, which after years of being hunted for their valuable hide have managed to survive extinction, but also for capybaras, the large and deliciously meaty rodents. First and foremost, the low plains are what the Llanos people, these Venezuelan Wild West cowboys, live for.
El guayabo de mi vida y de mi vida no tiene nombre ni fiesta. Lo cierto es que sus raíces son cicatrices que se notan en mi pecho y hacen mis días infelices sin norte ni fundamento.
William works at Hato El Cedral, an enormous 53,000-hectare cattle ranch. To deal with the relatively small number of large Venezuelan families, the vast majority of such hatos have recently been nationalized by President Chavez, with specific goals in mind: that of feeding the people and preserving the environment through the development of ecotourism within the ranches.
El paso real de mi pueblo que tanto nos vio contentos ahora me ve padeciendo con un litro de bastimento, borracho y amaneciendo, medio loco y plataré.
What I most enjoy about living here is to be able to ride a wild, untamed horse. Finding a good horse that jumps high over an obstacle, to run behind it, and to then capture it with a lasso. That's our favorite pastime in the corral. We pair up so one of us can slip the lasso's noose around its neck while the other catches its tail. We love it. It's our form of entertainment, our sport.
Uno enlaza y el otro colea en el rabo. Y nos divertimos mucho, nos encanta eso, eso es el deporte de nosotros.
While courting my mother, my father, who was also a llanero, would cross the river full of crocs and caimans to visit his soon-to-be bride. We, llanero, are not afraid of danger. We are proud. Pride flows in our blood and is at the root of all llano music.
Lo llevamos por dentro porque nos encanta la música llanera. Entonces, nosotros somos orgullosos, pues.
We are proud to be Il Llanero, and living here is what makes us happy. We have a proverb that says, if you leave this plain, leave for another one.
Que nosotros nos gusta vivir en el llano. Ahora, música de Venezuela.
Yo voy a pegar este grito para saludar a este público y presentarme cantando y llegar al punto justo sin meterme con ninguno porque yo no soy maluco, no conozco la ignorancia. Cuando no entiendo pregunto. Soy apureño, criollito, mis maestros fueron conucos. Un caballo era la regla y la rienda era un chulupo, la soga y el par de escuela.
When they're not playing lasso with horses and wild bulls, nature's guardians enjoy creeping into bogs to tame the Llano's greatest predator. In El Cedrel Ranch, the strongest at this type of rodeo is Victor, one of William's friends.
Where's the head?
Wow, grande hembra.
It's a large female. What are you waiting for to help me? It's a female anaconda almost at the adult stage. Stretched out, this female has to be about 4 meters long. She's very feisty.
Hembra, está muy luchadora.
Now pass me the tail.
Agarra aquí.
Hold her here.
Burto. Okay.
Do you want to hold her head?
En la época de apareamiento,
during the mating season, an anaconda female who doesn't want to be with the males anymore will jut this kind of spike she has inside, pricking the males pretty hard to tire them out until they will give up. That's how a female gets rid of the males.
A darle muy fuerte para que afloje el macho, para que todos los machos se vayan. Y esta hembra puede tener un buen apareamiento.
This particular female should copulate well with 4 or 5 males this year.
La población dura 2 o 3 meses, ¿ok?
Anaconda mating season lasts about 2 to 3 months. That's happening now. In July, August, and September, it's the gestation period. Baby anacondas are born in winter.
Liberemos la pobre.
All right, let's release the poor thing so she can get back to her kingdom.
Para que se vaya a su hábitat. Okay. Ahí. Mucho trabajo. Ahí ya voy. Bueno, la importancia del Orinoco en los llanos es lo siguiente.
The Orinoco plays a crucial role in the lives of the Llano people, since the more abundant the river's biodiversity is, the more diverse the animal population on the plains becomes. And that is an added benefit for man. The river is truly a symbol of life to us.
Para el ser humano y para otros seres también.
at the same time horseman, free man, indomitable and patient, impulsive and clever, indolent and tireless. A lanero embodies the historical heritage of conquistadors, black slaves, and Indian hunters who once occupied the Orinoco plains combined. Beyond the 1,000-kilometer stretch of almost a serene river course, the water narrows down. As if thrown in an effort to deny access to the Golden Roof Kingdom, in a downpour of rocks from high above by the hands of powerful giants or almighty gods, enormous stone boulders hamper all navigation efforts. Doorway to the Amazon, border crossing between Venezuela and Colombia, Puerto Ayacucho was originally a simple pathway through the deep forest. It later grew exponentially to become a commercial and bartering hub. Because the Orinoco is essentially the border between Colombia and Venezuela, the entire region also acts as a lower ground base to the FARC, the Colombian rebel army. Kidnappings are common, while the tension is palpable in an area constantly under the watchful eye of the Venezuelan Navy. In the midst of each dry season, the Orinoco reveals part of its history by exposing sections of its riverbed. It is strictly during that time, when the water levels are at their lowest, that exposed rocks show traces of an ancient civilization wiped out by the conquest, that of the Arawak people, the river's first inhabitants. In Puerto Ayacucho, Juan Carlos is the expert on petroglyphs, these 3,000-year-old rock drawings. Although he has a few foreigners as pupils, most of his students come from all over the country to take an outdoor natural history course.
Look, Payuda, you'll often find petroglyphs in the grottos in the midst of your research. You have to pay attention because only certain grottos have them. There, you can see human outlines. There's another smaller human figure.
I have two questions, Professor. Are we 100% sure that the petroglyphs were made by the Arawak? And during which century were they made?
Which era, you mean? It is in fact more than likely that the Arawak people are at the origin of these petroglyphs. Their settlement in this zone dates back from between 3,000 and 6,000 years. Remember that they were fishermen. They have always navigated the Orinoco. They originated from the sea and navigated up the river from the delta all the way here to Upper Orinoco. We know they mostly struck the pointy edge of cut stone pieces, repeatedly striking, one hit after another. Some other petroglyphs have been created through abrasion. They would take a stone and rub it. These are the two known petroglyph making techniques.
Frotan la figura y la van desarrollando. Totalmente que se conocen dos técnicas para petroglifos.
The snake stood as a river symbol in pre-Hispanic culture, a long and wide snake not unlike the Orinoco.
Lo más largo, lo más ancho de lo que es la presencia del río, en este caso el Orinoco.
There are also drawings that symbolize or depict the Indian world, the mythology, the river dweller's origin, and that of life in general.
Otro elemento importante es que hay figuras.
Another important detail is that there are many outlines or abstract drawings entirely unknown to us.
Just as it was back in the Arawak days, men and women settle on the petroglyph zone and stand fishing next to the rapids.
Ahorita está agarrando puro pescadito pequeñito.
At this time of year, we only catch very small fish. During dry season, there are no large fish around, but in August, when the water level goes back up, the river becomes much more vigorous and everything comes back. The water reaches a depth of about 4 meters. Everything is flooded.
When the river bursts out and swallows the sculptures, it becomes far more difficult to fish in the rapids.
For those of us who regularly work in the rapids, injuries are a rare occurrence. Only the most experienced venture in this particular area. Not just anyone hangs around here.
Up until the 1950s, the Orinoco's supply sources were still not well known. This was in part due to the numerous flooded forests, tributaries, rapids, and waterfalls it traversed, which hindered the exploration efforts. To this day, only 2 such expeditions have succeeded in reaching by boat the water sources situated at the border between Sierra Parima and Brazil. A number of Indians claim that a few small isolated native tribes still live on the Orinoco's shores in the vicinity of its sources, whose existence solely relies on hunting and gathering while moving about between Venezuela and Brazil. To the Panare Indians, they are known as Mataparitas, those who bludgeon to death. They live within the depths of the forest and rebuff any contact with the outside world. This may be much to their bliss.